90 minutes. That is reportedly all it took to change a wall inside Windsor Castle forever, and Camilla was asleep across London for every one of them. She did not know it was being carried in. She did not know the wrapping was coming off. She did not know that a woman she has allegedly feared for 50 years was standing in that room, personally deciding where it would hang. By the time she found out the next morning, according to the accounts now circulating, it was already too late to undo. None of this has been confirmed by the palace, so hold the dramatic parts as claim rather than fact. But hold them, because almost nobody is talking about the right person here. Everyone is asking what William did. Very few are asking who stood beside him while he did it. It was not Catherine. It was reportedly the one woman in that family Camilla has never been able to charm, never been able to intimidate, and never once been able to make bow. And her reason has nothing to do with Diana at all. It goes back to a wedding in 1973. Tap subscribe before we go on, because the second half of this is the part almost everybody gets wrong. Start with what was actually hanging on that wall and what was not. There is a painting of Princess Diana that most people have never seen up close. It was made when she was at the height of everything. The beauty, the warmth, that thing she did in a hospital corridor where an ordinary person suddenly felt like the only human being in the building. People present when she first saw the finished canvas say she went quiet in front of it, not polite quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when something has caught exactly who you are and you were not ready for it. Long portrait was reportedly meant for the room at Windsor where the most significant women in the history of the monarchy are honoured. Diana never saw it hung. She died in August 1997, before it happened. And according to the accounts circulating now, after she died, the canvas was wrapped, boxed and carried into palace storage, where it stayed in the dark for more than 20 years. Which leaves one question nobody inside that building has ever answered out loud. Somebody decided that painting should stay in the dark, and somebody kept deciding it year after year for 2 decades. Remember that question. It matters far more at the end of this than it does right now. Now go back to 1973, because the story starts long before Diana was ever in it. Before Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles, Andrew Parker Bowles was in a serious relationship with Princess Anne, serious enough that marriage was discussed between them. It was shut down. He was Catholic, and Anne, as a senior figure in the Church of England, was not permitted to marry him, so she stepped aside. There was no negotiation in it and no version where she won. Within a short time, Camilla was there. Andrew proposed to her instead, and Anne sat in the pews at their 1973 wedding and watched it happen. Sit with that for a moment, because everything that comes later hangs on it. She then watched that same woman spend the following decades as the secret inside her own brother's marriage. She watched that marriage collapse in public. She watched Diana die. She watched the long, careful rehabilitation, the measured appearances, the slow rebuilding of a reputation. And then she watched her walk into Westminster Abbey and be crowned. Royal author Penny Junor has reported that Camilla found Anne deeply intimidating for years, that Anne's coldness toward her was described as nerve-wracking, and that nothing from their shared past was ever resolved. After the 2023 coronation, Anne allegedly confronted her privately and told her, in substance, that she was not the Queen, she was the King's wife. Anne has also reportedly never bowed to her. The claim is that she asked the late Queen personally to be exempt from that protocol, and that she was granted it. Hold that woman in your mind. She is standing in the room later, because there was a second person carrying something, and he was 15 years old. William was 15 when he walked behind his mother's coffin through the streets of London, in a suit, in silence, in front of the entire world, his face completely still. He already knew about the affair. Diana had sat him down and told him herself. 3 people in the marriage. That was the reason his family broke apart. Harry found out a different way. He was watching a television debate about the monarchy with his mother when Camilla's name came up on screen, and he turned and asked her who that was. Diana had to explain it to her youngest son Liv, unprepared, in her own living room. But the thing that would set William permanently came from a letter, and this part is documented. In 1995, 2 years before her death, Diana wrote a note to her solicitor, Lord Mishcon. In it, she recorded her belief that efforts were being made to remove her, and she named the method she feared: a staged car accident, brake failure, serious head injury. She wrote that Camilla was a decoy. She wrote that she was being used by the man in every sense of the word. 2 years later, she died in a car crash in a Paris tunnel. That note was handed to police after her death and then sat untouched for 6 years before it reached Scotland Yard. Charles was eventually questioned about it privately. The subsequent inquest found no evidence of any plot, and that needs saying plainly. But William did not read that letter as an inquest exhibit. He read it as a son. Biographers say he broke exactly once at 16. He pulled a close confidant aside and let all of it out in one go. He said Camilla got her claws into his father and never let go for a single instant. He said that was the reason his mother was dead. Driven out of her own family, stripped of her protection, pushed out until there was nobody left around her, alone in a tunnel at speed in the middle of the night. A 16-year-old said that about the woman then moving into his mother's house. Then he carried it, silently, for 25 years. And what he watched happen during those years is the part that reportedly hardened all of it. When Diana died, the world grieved loudly. Inside the palace, insiders have long claimed something quieter and considerably uglier was already in motion. Reports over the years have suggested that among the earliest concerns raised after the crash was not grief at all, but whether Diana still had crown property in her possession in Paris. The palace has never confirmed that, and it stays one of the most contested claims of that entire week. And while that was happening, the woman Diana had privately nicknamed the Rottweiler was allegedly beginning to move. Camilla had spent years as the hidden one. The woman Charles reportedly visited in secret while married. The name whispered in every room she was not in. Now Diana was gone and she began moving through the rooms Diana had called home. The claim, and it is only a claim, is that she did not simply move in, she erased. Diana kept fresh flowers throughout her spaces, arrangements she chose herself. Sources allege that Camilla ordered them removed and burned, not replaced, burned. The bedroom Diana slept in, the room where she held her boys and cried alone at night, was reportedly ordered locked, permanently. She allegedly did not want it for herself, and she made sure nobody else would ever have it either. Diana's personal items reportedly went into boxes. Her image is said to have thinned out of the most ceremonial rooms in the royal residences, slowly enough that no single removal ever made a headline, and that room at Windsor stayed empty. For more than 20 years, the most beloved royal woman of the modern era was missing from her own family's wall, while her son sat and watched and said nothing. Now the night itself, because the detail here is what makes people believe the story. According to the account, William did not move quickly. He spent years preparing it properly. Meetings with curators about placement protocol, study of the historical record on every previous portrait ever hung in that room. Every institutional rule followed exactly, so that once it was done, nobody could challenge it, and nobody could quietly reverse it 6 months later while the country was looking somewhere else. A 20-year chess game inside his own family, and this was reportedly the final move. The night before, he is said to have called his aunt. Neither of them needed a long one. Both had been waiting a very long time. The next day, William's team allegedly had Camilla scheduled for an engagement outside London. Deliberate, according to the claim. Get her out of the building and keep her out until it was finished and irreversible. While she was gone, the room at Windsor was reportedly closed to everyone except a handful of personally vetted staff. Nothing on the official diary, no press release, no photographer. Total silence. In the early evening, the portrait was carried in. It had been in protective wrapping in storage for over 20 years. The staff who handled it that night are described as moving carefully with it, the way people move with something that has been hurt. Anne reportedly insisted on overseeing the placement herself. She was not going to stand at the back and let somebody else do this one. The wrapping came off slowly. 90 minutes later, Diana's face was on that wall, placed directly beside the late Queen Elizabeth. 2 women side by side. One who reigned for 70 years and one who never got the chance to reign at all. The room reportedly went quiet. Nobody spoke. They stood and looked at it. Then Anne, who had walked in carrying 50 years of her own history, is said to have spoken almost to herself, that Diana belonged here, that she always had. Across London, Camilla slept. Before the morning, understand how much this exact moment had always frightened her. Royal biographer Christopher Anderson has reported that when Camilla first met William face-to-face at Clarence House, she was shaking and needed a drink to steady herself before walking into the room, physically trembling at the thought of facing a teenager. She had reportedly been afraid of William since he was 16 years old, and she had allegedly never once imagined he would actually do this. The next morning, she came back to Windsor expecting an ordinary day. The reaction, according to insiders, was immediate. She did not take it quietly. She ordered the portrait taken down at once. She demanded an emergency meeting with William. She insisted that Charles intervene. She demanded a full explanation from every member of staff involved. Every one of those demands was reportedly refused. For the first time in her royal life, she is described as completely powerless inside her own home. The woman who had allegedly spent 25 years rearranging that palace around herself had just discovered that a palace can be rearranged right back. But the refusals were not the worst part of that morning. The worst part was her husband. Charles had spent decades fighting for Camilla, against the institution, against the public, against the press, against his own sons. For 25 years, he was the one person on earth she could count on to stand in front of her when something came. And she stood there, humiliated and furious, waiting for him to fix it. He is said to have looked at her and said nothing. No call, no objection. No quiet instruction to a private secretary an hour later. He reportedly let his son's decision stand, let his sister's actions go unchallenged, and let the portrait remain exactly where it was. Which brings back the question from the start of this. Somebody decided that painting should stay in the dark for 20 years, and kept deciding it. If Charles had genuinely wanted it on that wall, it would have been on that wall. He held the authority the entire time. This is also the same man who, according to recent reporting, has privately asked William not to push Camilla out after he is gone. He reportedly knows exactly how deep his son's resentment runs. Sources close to the family have said plainly that neither son has forgotten what they believe Camilla did to their mother, and that William has simply been more disciplined than Harry about hiding it. Harry chose to say it out loud. In his 2023 memoir, he confirmed that both brothers begged their father not to marry her. Both reportedly used the words wicked stepmother. Both called her a villain. William chose something else entirely. He chose patience. He chose the institution itself as the instrument. He waited until he held the authority to use it properly, and then he moved once. And then, according to the account, Anne walked into the room and faced her directly. 5 words spoken to the one person in that family she had never been able to win over. That it was what Diana deserved. What reportedly followed was not just a bad morning, it was a permanent change in the weather. Diana's patronages are being lifted back into prominence under Catherine's office. Charities Diana built out of genuine personal commitment are moving back into William's official schedule. Her name is being spoken inside palace communications with a frequency that has not existed since before she died. He was 15 when he walked behind that coffin. He made himself a promise that day, and then he waited. He prepared. He built the foundation so carefully that once it was finished, it could not be taken apart. And he brought in the one person in that family with the standing to make it permanent. Then on one quiet evening, while Camilla slept across London with no idea any of it was happening, he reportedly walked his mother back into the room she was always owed. Diana is on that wall now beside the Queen, and she is not coming down. So tell me below, did William wait too long, or did he time it exactly right? Because there is one more piece to this. The moment William takes the throne, there is reportedly a decision waiting for him about Camilla's title. And according to those same accounts, the groundwork for it already exists. That is the next one, and it is waiting for you right here.